welcome everybody. This session is called Moving Online. It's how exactly to repackage a face-to-face class into an awesome online experience. I'm Carrie Beam. I work for the MSOM program, that's the Masters of Science in Operations Management program. It's under the Department of Industrial Engineering at the University of Arkansas. You are hearing this today at the Inform's annual meeting in Phoenix, 2018, and we are on the planet Earth, so now that we all know where we are, we're going to move online. So why am I giving this talk to you all today? Well, I had a lot of people say things to me like, you know, I've taught in the classroom for 30 years, and now my dean is pressuring me to move online. I don't know where to start. Meanwhile, you have the dean skipping around campus in his robes with bouquets of flowers in his hands, saying, I'm the guy they're all complaining about. So we need a solution. The question is, what management techniques do we need so that our faculty are able to move happily online? This talk will give you a practical roadmap for who needs to do what and by when, so you can move it all online. It's a pretty highly motivated area. The demand for online education is exploding. It's convenient and it's competitive. And what this means is we can now lose students to a university way far away. The flip side of this is you can now poach them from across the country as well. In the University of Arkansas, where I work, we have the MSOM program. There's no GMAT or GRE required for entrance. We've got about 700 or so students, and about 90% of them are now fully online. That means they never need to set foot in the city of Fayetteville, Arkansas, in order to do it. And about 15% of them are active duty military. And reading between the lines here, these are some guys, if we're gonna have people with this profile doing things like programming in R or doing linear regression, they need a lot of good instruction. We have the volume to drive to do good experiments to find out what works and what doesn't work. And when I say active duty military, how many of you in this room have been in the military active duty? So, that's what it means to me as a professor, is I get emails like this. Hey professor, hello from Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. We just took some incoming and then we lost power for a day. And then I had to go out on duty. So can I have an extension on my week 3 homework? These are the kinds of emails that happen when you're working in a 24/7 online environment. It's a little bit different than Monday and Wednesday, 6 to 9 p.m. in room 12. So here's an outline of my talk today. I'm going to talk about teaching your first online class. If you've never done it before, what can you do to going from 0 to 1? Next, I'm going to talk about designing good OR analytics classes. We're going to talk about videos, adaptive release, grading online, and student engagement. Then the last part is I'm going to give you some metrics on the development process. This is of a special interest if you're actually managing the people developing these things and you're wondering why nothing gets done on time or within budget. We're going to cover resources and then Q&A with our EdTech. All right, so teaching your very first online class. So phase 1 is face-to-face. The metaphor I like to use for this is the Pied Piper. You are the Pied Piper out here, and all your students are little mice following you around. And by this, what I mean is if you have 3 professors in 3 different sections, each one can be doing something different in his intro class. You could have somebody doing case studies, somebody doing paper and pencil homework, somebody else doing computer labs. It's individual, and you can kind of go wherever you want, over hill, over dale, without a lot of guidance. That's one of the reasons people like to teach, is they like the freedom. I'm not actually going to cover best practices teaching face-to-face. You guys already know all this. You're already great at that. Phase 2 of online education. The metaphor I like to use here is that of a bus, and one of these really cool double-decker buses in London. So you are the bus driver, and your students are the passengers on the bus. So you're using existing technology. Somebody else built the bus, and you're using existing roads and existing routes. Somebody else figured out where you got to drive and what you got to do. But you still have to do it. You still have to take this group of people through all the different stops once a semester. So if you're going to be driving the bus, here's some best practices for teaching a class which has already been designed. And we're going to assume it's been well designed by somebody else. Before you teach it, Take the class once as a student, and here's the key, get a B. It is really, really hard to get a B if you're qualified to teach it, but I know you can do it. I had one professor who would actually take the quizzes and then go through and systematically remove 15% of his answers so he could get the B. And the reason you want to do this is you want the experience of your average student. We are not average students. We are good at this stuff. That's how you end up teaching it. You want the experience of your average student. And getting a B means you also don't read the directions before you try to take a quiz, that kind of stuff. Expect to spend about 3 hours learning your system, Blackboard, Moodle, or whatever it is. It's only 3 hours of your life. It's not forever. It can feel like forever if you hate that stuff, but it's only a morning. It'll also be really helpful to invest about 10 hours in learning HTML. If you could only learn 3 commands, I would learn how to embed hyperlinks in documents, how to display images, and then how to create paragraphs and bulleted lists. If you can do those 3 things, you can pretty much program your way through most of what you need to do in a classroom. And then the first time you teach it, first thing you need to do is you've got to learn how to grade completely online. I still know some people who like to have papers emailed to them, and then they print them out, and they take a pencil and mark them up, and then they type their comments back in, or with a handwritten problem set, they like to write it. It's really inefficient to do it that way. You're much better off to learn how to do the inline grading, either adding comments to a paper without ever printing it off or typing it into the system. And the other thing a lot of people need to do is there's a mental calendar shift that needs to happen. If you're teaching a class, you sometimes can think, my class happens Monday and Wednesday evenings from 6 to 9. And then if it's not those time epochs, my class is not happening. If you're teaching online, it's 24/7, especially if you have students distributed in Asia or around the globe, around time zones. And so what you need to do is you can learn to time announcements. I have an announcement that goes off in my class Wednesday morning at 12:30 a.m. I'm not typically up at that hour. I set it ahead of time so it goes, so whoever's up first thing on Wednesday gets to see that announcement for Wednesday. Something else, you need to be prepared to answer a lot more email. When you're face-to-face, a lot of the questions come to you face-to-face. If you're fully online, some people like to spend an hour a day and they just say literally every day from 2 to 3 p.m. I will answer my student emails. Other people learn to answer their emails from the phone. I do a lot of this so I can pick off questions when I'm in line at the grocery store or with kids at a swim meet. I mean, obviously not every question can be answered that way, but some questions can be answered that way, like, is the midterm closing tonight? You know, that's a yes or no question. I can do that from my phone. With the phone, you also need to be clear when you're off duty. They're not always good at remembering what time zone you're in, so I suggest switching the phone to silent at night and putting it in a room that's not where you're trying to sleep. Something else I would suggest if it's your first time is get a mentor and do a 1-hour screen share each week where you try to drive the bus and they sit next to you and they say, don't push this button, push that button. If your classes start on Wednesdays, Tuesdays are a great day to set up this screen share. It tends to work a lot better if you can book an hour of tutoring each week for yourself rather than if you're a beginner and trying to just ask ad hoc catch-as-catch-can questions. And also the first time you teach it on a new platform, book about 3 to 5 hours a week on technical issues. Put tech support on speed dial. It's not going to be an extra 3 to 5 hours every week, but the first time you teach it, the first semester, it probably will be. So just in your mental budget, build in that it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And now we move to phase 3, which is designing your own class. If being online, face-to-face is like the Pied Piper, and teaching a class somebody else has designed is like driving the bus. Designing your own class is kind of like a go-kart track, but you are the go-kart track architect. You have a field, it's blank before you start. You had to lay the pavement. You also had to paint the lines. Plus you had to build all the go-karts and you had to put all the little tires there. And then your students are individually driving themselves around roads that you made. And if you designed it well, they'll all eventually drive themselves down the right paths to get where they need to go. I always like this image because I like the image of my students in crash test helmets. You gotta protect that intellectual property up there. So why does OR and analytics go online so well? We've got quantitative problems here. They often have logical solutions. And success in our field comes from breaking a complicated thing down into small individual parts. We are already, as OR practitioners, really good at this skill. And it's easy to teach a computer to ask or solve a lot of homework questions that are small mathematical problems with quantitative answers. So the skill that we have here is breaking the complicated stuff down into little bits that a computer can then execute for us. That is the skill you need to take it online. So now I'm talking a little bit about designing good OR and analytics classes. I'm going to cover the use of videos. I'm going to cover something called adaptive release, which is almost as magical as Harry Potter. I'm going to cover grading online. There's a whole bunch of ways to do that. And then student engagement. How do we actually get students to engage online? If they're in class, you can see when they're sleeping and checked out. But if they're online, how do you know if they actually are interested or alive or awake? And then finally, I'll cover the development process. I'll share with you some numbers that we've taken at the University of Arkansas for our development process and resources, and some Q&A with EdTech. And EdTech are the people who really help these things run. We use an online class template. You can certainly adapt this to your university. I'll tell you what we do down at Arkansas. Is we have an 8-week semester. And weeks 1 through 3, you'll typically do new course material each week. And then in week 4, there's typically some assessment. It's a paper, it's an exam, it's a project, it's something that's a big part of their grade. And then we have weeks 5 through 7, where there's more new course material. And then week 8, there's typically a final exam or a final project to do, some other big evaluation. And then we do it all again. We run five of these 8-week semesters a year, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring, and 1 over the summer. You can adapt whatever your university schedule is, you can set yourself up like that. The semester is determined by the registrar, and this is set like years in advance, so I can't control when 8-week 2 in the spring of 2019 starts or finishes. But what is set by me is the week. I can decide, does my class start on a Wednesday morning and end on a Tuesday night? Does it start on a Saturday morning and end on a Friday night? Sometimes if I'm teaching, for example, this semester I've got 3 classes in Arkansas, and I like to stagger them, so some things due Sunday, some things due Tuesday, some things due Thursday. That way I don't have 3 classes worth of grading coming in all at the same time. Other times, if there's 3 sections of the same class taught by 3 of us, I may talk to the other professors, and we may all want to say, okay, we're all gonna start on Wednesday, so that way I don't have my midterm exam still open while somebody else has finished grading his and released the solutions to a very similar exam. The point here is the calendar is a lot more flexible when you're online, and so you want to use your flexibility and use your ability to determine the calculator to best serve your students, and also to make your own life a little bit easier. If there's a certain evening of the week that's a really bad evening for you to take phone calls or respond to students, maybe you've got a pre-existing commitment that night, don't have your homework due that night. You don't want to be popular with your students when you're committed to your Thursday night activity. Here's one example of an online class template. This is from our Introduction to Analytics class. You can see at the very top, we have week 3, day 1, and then graphical displays of information. So as the students go through, they're getting used to seeing week 4, day 1, week 5, day 1. This is what they'll typically see. I start off with a little joke of the day. What is a pirate's favorite programming language? And it's R, which is what we're programming in this course. You don't have to tell jokes with your students, but they do like it. And then we say, on a slightly more serious note, we're now starting week 3. You can find it all in course content, weekly lessons, week 3. One of the things we found critical for success is explicit navigation. Even if you think they already know where to find it, tell them where to find it again. We want the experience in our online classrooms to be like shopping at Amazon, not like trying to renew your license at the DMV. They are busy, they are coming to us for a service, and part of the service I want to provide is really easy navigation to what they need when they need it. Then we have some adaptive release here. We say if you don't see it, make sure you've submitted the week 2 peer evaluation form, and then we show them where it is. It's at the bottom of the week 1 materials. I'll speak a little bit more to adaptive release in a minute, but basically we're requiring them to do a survey about their team members last week before we let them see the stuff from this week. And then this week, they've got the following. We give them some automatically graded individual homework. The individual homework is pretty self-explanatory. It means they're supposed to do it by themselves. And we give them numbering here. Ours really like having a numbered list of things to do each week. And so you can see here there's 4 different things they need to do. If you were a student, your experience here would be you would do it submit it to the computer, and then the computer would tell you right away if you got it correct or not. So you can do this, you don't have to wait for me to grade it. You can do it and find out right away if your skill set is up to where it needs to be. And then the last part is we've got a team assignment here. Different classes, of course, will have different levels of team assignments. In our program, one of our program objectives is communicating to stakeholders and top management, so we like to give them lots of practice in either oral or written presentations. The group project is typically a higher order thinking activity. They need to write a report, they need to do an oral presentation, and then something that the professor does grade and give good feedback to. You'll notice that because the professor's not doing a whole bunch of mind-numbing grading of little bits of mathematics, they're more open and more free to give better feedback on the group projects. So what are some good things about this kind of class template? The week X, day Y orientation, typically day 1, I give them an overview of the week's work and the week's deliverables. So starting this week, this is what you're going to have to do, this is how you know you've succeeded in doing it. Day 3, I like to pre-answer questions. Once you've taught it once or twice, you kind of know what they're going to be asking, so you can set an announcement to go to pre-answer questions, like if you can't do this, look at this part of the book or something like that. And then day 6, I like to give them a reminder that it's all due tomorrow night at 11:59 p.m. If it matters, you do need to specify the time zone. If you're not charging late points, you might not need to. But again, it's a global 24/7 environment. So your 11:59 p.m. may not be there at 11:59 p.m. I highly recommend avoiding 12 a.m. because I have gotten more pushback and arguments about which day 12 a.m. referred to. 11:59 p.m. is very clearly a particular day. Working professionals often need some weekday and some weekend time for study. So if you've got a 7-day week, that works well. We haven't had a lot of success with assignments that start on a Monday and require some milestone by Thursday, and then the rest of it by Sunday, because sometimes people work crazy shifts during that Monday through Thursday, so they just can't make it happen. You know, and similarly, we don't do well assigning it Friday morning and having it due Sunday night, because sometimes people don't have that time. But we find if you can make a full 7-day window available, most people can make some kind of time happen in there. And then the other thing that we found has been really successful is whatever your pattern is for your class, repeat it every week. I mean, obviously the contents of the individual homework or the group projects may change, but if you're going to have some individual work and some group work each week, it's very helpful to get that on autopilot so that they just know, okay, I have this, I have that. One of the reasons people typically come online to study is because they're already too busy and too overcommitted to come in face-to-face. And so adding one more level of complexity, like we're going to change up the types of assignments we give you each week, typically isn't a big crowd pleaser. All right, designing good online classes. One of the first things people always ask about are videos. If you're teaching face-to-face, you don't need as many videos because you sort of are the video. You're there Mondays and Wednesdays. They get to look at you, you get to look at them. You can sing, you can dance, you can do all sorts of fun things. If you're online, often the thing that replaces that is a video component. I'm going to cover a couple different types of videos. First type that people think about is there are videos by the textbook. Many textbooks offer great videos by the authors. They'll do office hours, they'll have someone writing out a linear program. It's the coolest thing ever. And because they wrote the textbook, it corresponds exactly to the way it's taught in the textbook. Unfortunately, it often requires students to subscribe or purchase a code to get into the site. Plus, there's often a linkage to the publisher webpage. We tried this and we found it just way too tedious. We did it and then we had to undo it, so we found it so difficult to work with that it was actually easier to go through and undo it and then redo the content ourselves. And so that was our experience with the publishing companies. The links and the permissions didn't copy each semester, and it was too hard to get all the students registered. It would still be midterm, and we'd have somebody who would have purchased the textbook, but maybe he bought it used or online or something, and he didn't have his entrance code, so he couldn't do any of his homework. We found it just simply easier to make all of our own videos. They're always available. We own the intellectual property to them. If we feel like copying them to 79 million sections of our intro class, we can. And if we don't like them or if we want to update them, we can do that too. So let's say you do want to make a video by the professor. You can totally make your own. You could use Camtasia, or there's other editing software out there. We recommend each video is 5 to 10 minutes long. This means if you have an hour's worth of lecture, you don't want to record an hour video. What you want to record are, 12 5-minute videos. What we also found is these students, they don't typically, if you give them a list of 10 videos, they don't do it like a book. They don't start at the beginning of video 1 and watch to the end of video 10. They typically try to do the homework first, and then they'll go back and search through and watch the videos to see what they were missing. So we thought, let's make this behavior easy. I don't want them needing to wait for me to tell them which video to watch. So we found if you have a searchable text description, so you can see on the left here, we've got our little video link, which is in the red circle there. And then we have a text description next to it. And then next to that, this is an R programming class, so we have the R computer commands. And then we have the length in minutes. So if they click on that link, it'll bring up that video. But if they know that they're just like, oh gosh, I'm looking for affinity analysis, they can do a Control F and text search that entire page and figure out which video will show them what they want. If you want to be able to reuse your videos infinitely, you don't want to say things like Happy 4th of July to everybody, or oh my goodness, isn't it cold out? Because then if you replay it at a different time of year, you sound a little strange. If you can kind of keep it very neutral, saying things that are just equally cheery, like I'm happy to see you all here today, that plays well in the winter and or the summer. Making your own videos is super time intensive. I recently did some videos for a probability and statistics class we're doing. It took me about 25 hours to create 6 videos, averaging 9 minutes each, so about 51 minutes total. It's roughly 10 to 30 minutes of prep of my life per minute of video. And this is from a probability and statistics textbook, teaching stuff that I already knew. So this did not include the time it took me to learn this. I started with templates from the textbook like this, a one-tailed test about a population mean. But there's upsides to it. First of all, I could tailor the lectures to exactly the pieces of the homework that I was assigning. And then you guys heard at the beginning, I work for the University of Arkansas. I could not pass up the opportunity to point out to the students on the videos that in addition to a particular probability distribution test, which had one tail, our mascot is a razorback, and the razorback also has one tail. And so you can do things like put a little red pig in the bottoms of your animations and have it go across the screen. And if you want to do this in Camtasia, you just run a Google search on how do I animate a graphic. And so it's probably just as well we don't have a 2-tailed mascot, because I'm not sure that the students would have been ready for that one. The next thing is, once you've had all your fun making your own videos by the professor, you want to take a look at videos by students. This is going to substitute for the face-to-face contact that they would get talking to each other in a face-to-face class. There's a whole bunch of softwares you can use. Kaltura is one we have at Arkansas. Camtasia has a free student version download. There's one called Screencast-O-Matic, which is not awesome, but it's free and certainly good enough for the students. There's lots of other software out there. Something we've had success with is for teams or individuals, give them an assignment, and the assignment is to create a 5-minute presentation on something, and then upload it to a classroom discussion board. You can either literally have them upload the video to your server, or if your server's not up to that, have them upload it to YouTube and post a link to it. And then have them review the presentations by other students. So if I'm a student, my experience is that I make my video, but then I have to watch 3 videos by other students and leave feedback on that, so I see what they got to say too. We often do 1 video presentation deliverable per 8-week course so that they can practice presenting to upper management. This is also a key skill because a lot of these guys are going to be working in global distributed jobs, and they may be needing to do video conference presentations to managers. And it's a very good job skill to have. Summarize this in 5 minutes and tell me what we should do. So if some is good, more is better, right? And the most is best of all. So what do you do when you have videos in volume? At this point, you are less of a video creator and more of a librarian. We came up with the idea of a video library to organize a lot of material. We have an introduction to decision support systems, which is basically an introductory Excel class, and there's probably 100 to 200 videos available in there for students to watch. So we felt like we needed a better way to organize these videos rather than just a list of 5 or 6 of them per class. So in our class, we have a permanent link on the left to the video library. So at any time during any homework assignment, the student always can go to the video library. And if you click on it, it clicks through to a publicly viewable Google Sheet. Does everybody in here know what a Google Sheet is? Yeah, all right. If you don't, it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet that's on the web, and you can set it so everybody can see it. So if you click on the link to the video library, you'll get something like this. And this sheet, you can see this has 7 or 8 tabs across the bottom, one for each week of the class. And if I'm a student, I can go to the week 6 tab. And here again, I can do my little control F, I can do my searching. Let's say I'm really having trouble with the VLOOKUP function on my homework. I can zero in very quickly on which of the 3 videos here show me how to do the VLOOKUP. And typically this behavior occurs between midnight and 6 a.m., so this is like a great time to not be asked this question. This is a great time to give them the power to self-answer it. Other things we like about this is it's in one spot, it's easy to update, and many instructors can share. We sometimes have 3 or 4 different instructors teaching different sections of the same class. We can all use the same video library to standardize the content we give our students. So now here's where I get to the whiz-bang showing off part here. What we've done is we also added a little rate this video link where they can click on it. We offer them extra credit points for giving us video reviews. So if you are Bobby the student, you click on that, it brings up a little form, and you fill out your form, you give it between 1 and 5 stars, you tell me what you thought of it. And we also ask, if you didn't like this video, did you find a better video somewhere? And if you did, please give us its link. And then they submit it, and this gets written to a little database down here. And then at the end of the class, we can now use this to run a self-improving classroom. I do a couple things. Each week, I go through, and on the left, you can see extra credit. Stephen there submitted his 3 extra credit videos, so I'll go into the gradebook and give him his 3 extra credit points for his video reviews. So that's his incentive. And then what I can do is once a semester, I can look under that update each term, and if a video is repeatedly getting reviews of 1, 2, or 3 stars, I can say, you know, this video is really not serving my students well, so I'm gonna look to replace it. What am I gonna replace it with? With something they like. I've now got a short list on the right of any link that they've given. In a year, we probably get about 2,000 video reviews from our students over this, and so we're able to pretty easily cull it and get all of our videos into that 4 and 5 star range. So this is an example of a self-improving classroom where we're using technology to really gather data and improve how we serve our students. And you'll notice once I find a better video, I can just replace the link to it once in the video library. And then it's automatically going to update it. It's going to, all the sections will see it. I don't need to go through every homework assignment and update the link. I don't need to go through every web page. Just one change and it upgrades it. The next part of designing good online classes I'm going to talk about is this magic thing called adaptive release. It's essentially a glorified if-then statement. Adaptive release in the classroom, it will take an action when some condition is true. The condition can be per student, it can be per group, it can be per calendar date. It's sort of, if you think of adaptive release, I think of it as the little white tires or the little up and down gates in your go-karts that will allow some students to go left, require other students to go right. You can think of adaptive release as the tool by which you guide your go-karts. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples because sometimes an example is better than a theoretical underpinning of an if-then statement. We can require student acceptance of an academic integrity pledge before they get to see any classroom material. We can require Joe to submit homework 1 before displaying the homework 1 solutions to Joe. We can require 50% on an automatically graded reading comprehension quiz before Sally gets to download her homework. We can require Lee to post to the discussion board before he gets to read what anybody else has posted to the discussion board. So this can eliminate some of the concerns about, oh, he's just going to steal my ideas. We can require Amber to complete the week 2 peer evaluation survey before she gets to see the week 3 materials. We can require Otto to submit the week 5 homework before he gets to see the week 6 materials. We can require November 1st to pass before showing anybody the midterm solutions. That was a rookie adaptive release. The refined version is you require November 1st plus a submission of the midterm on the student's part before allowing them to see the midterm solutions. So adaptive release in action. we've got our OMGT 4853 class. It's a decision support tool system. But basically it's an introductory Excel class. So the workflow that we support here with the adaptive release is the students start by watching videos in the video library, that way cool thing with all the spreadsheets I showed you. And then they have to pass a quiz at the 50% level. And once they've done that, they can download the homework. If they want to improve their skills, they can go back and retake the quiz again and again until they raise their score, but they need to hit at least 50% before they even get to see the homework. And once they've downloaded the homework, they can complete and submit it. And they have benefit of auto-graded Excel sheets. I'll come to that in a minute. And then from here, there are two things that adaptive release lets them do. The first thing is we let them view the solutions, and then we let them revise and resubmit their homework if it's still before the deadline. And this is really helpful because a lot of times they just can't figure out how to get that VLOOKUP or that pivot table to work. But what we can do is we can show them on the spot. We're like, do your best, give it a try. But then we'll let the computer show you the solutions and you can fix it. Because that gets their learning right when they were confused about it. They don't have to wait 4 days for me to figure out what was wrong with it. And then the other thing we let them do is once they've submitted their homework, it unlocks next week's solutions. You may not always want to require homework submission for next week's solutions, but in classes that are heavily, heavily cumulative, we found it works to our advantage to require them to do the beginnings before they get to do the middles. More adaptive release in action. We have an intro class, and we require submission of weekly team peer evaluations to open next week's materials. If you're a student in this class, in weeks 1, 2, 3, and then 5, 6, and 7, each of those weeks you'll have a team project you need to do. Well, it can be awful to be on a team with a free writer who doesn't do their work. And it's really nice to be able to have a way to give feedback to that team member early in the semester that they need to up their game. So we just give a simple question that says, please enter all team members' names into this survey and rate them from 1, which will be awful, to 4, which will be excellent. And we get something like this. The top one, we have Ashley, Natalie, Michael, and Marty. These people are working well together as a team. You get comments like, everybody was great. In that case, as the professor, your job is pretty easy. You just write great teamwork, and then if the team paper is an 85%, all 4 of them get 85%, and we move on. More fun happens when you have a team like the second team. You'll notice there are 4 people on this team, and I only got 3 team evaluations, so you can already know something's up. Stephen, Jasmine, and Rachel seem to be doing a fine job, but people are not happy with John's performance. I get comments like, everybody made good contributions, minus John. No one has heard from him. Is he still alive? And so what I would do as the professor in this situation is I would give John a 0 for this assignment, and I would give everybody else the grade that the paper earned, like 85%. And then what I would do on the feedback I gave to all members of the group is say, your peer evaluations showed not everybody participated equally. The team earned 85% on this. If your score is different from that, reach out to your team members and find out what they want from you so they'll award you full participation points next week. I don't put myself in the position of having to go back through and look at rough drafts and decide how much of it John wrote versus how much he didn't write, or whether he did or did not respond to text messages in a timely fashion. I just tell him, look, dude, you need to have a meeting of the minds with your team members and behave in a way that they want you to behave. We get some fabulous responses from this. We also started to implement a question, which is, what one concept from this week do you still have questions about? This is one area where I found the online environment markedly superior to a lecture hall. If I had a lecture hall of 30 of them and said, all right, who's got a question about this week's material? They're all gonna sit on their hands. Nobody wants to admit in public that they don't know how to do something. But if you have to submit an answer to this as a condition of receiving next week's homework assignment, everybody's got something to say, right? And so you get things like, I'm still working on the bottleneck concept, utilization, efficiency, capacity. I would like to spend more time building process flow maps. Again, at the end of the semester, I have a couple hundred of these things, and I can sort of begin to pick out themes in sort of what can, from the self-improving classroom, what do we really need more instructional material on? And if you're like me, there's 2 things on here that jumped out at you. You get some of these, can you take Zeke off my team? That's the question for the week. And the last one, I'll leave that self-explanatory to you all. It says, this linear programming is kicking my, and they are explicit in what it is kicking. So designing good online classes, grading, I'm going to cover self-grading homeworks. I'm going to cover Blackboard auto-grading. I'm going to cover analytics IAPs. It's an acronym that stands for Individual Activity Packs. That's for automatic grading of higher order thinking skills like computer programming. And then how do you grade handwritten work online? There's a solution for that as well. And then the last piece of this chunk I'll cover is academic integrity. That's another frequently asked question, which is, if they're online, how do I ensure the integrity of what they're doing? All right, so grading online, there's two types of assessments that you can give. There's a formative assessment and a summative assessment. A formative assessment is something where as they do the activity, they receive feedback about how well they're doing and they learn from doing it. An example of this might be a supply chain game where they learn to manage their inventory levels and forecasts based on how well their supply chain does. The summative assessment is something like an exam. It's kind of a once and done thing, and that tests yes or no, did you know this concept at a good enough level? So if it's a formative assessment, if you're trying to teach them using it, you want to chop it up into lots of little atomic units. These things typically have easy quantitative results in our field, which makes it, if you know how to set it up, easy for the computer to grade it. These include anything from multiple choice questions to forecasting, linear regression, linear programming, computer code, spreadsheets. All of this stuff is really easy to chop up into little bits and let a computer grade. You can make it a formative assessment very easily by having it give them feedback about what they did wrong and letting them try it again and again until they get it right. So this is a student that gives them, it takes away the threat of an online quiz if they know they can take it as many times as they want and it will only save their highest score. The second type is the summative assessment. Here's where you're looking to see that they can demonstrate mastery. This is typically complex, multi-step papers, presentations, midterm, final exams, those kinds of problems. These are harder results, so these are things that the professor will grade. Or maybe a teaching assistant, should you be so lucky. So grading online, many textbooks offer online homework problems automatically generated. They have test banks, they're automatically graded, and they integrate online with the packages. The marketing on these things is splendid. So we also have not had success with these. We couldn't get their videos to work, so we totally could not get their homework packages to work. They cost more money for the students. They were very difficult to integrate with Blackboard. And we had difficulties copying the homeworks from shell to shell, semester over semester. And then to add to it all, the solutions are often available for off-label purchase on the internet. It was just easier to write our own because, again, we had the ownership of them, we could copy them wherever we wanted, we could fix them, and it took them a little longer to be available for purchase on the internet. So one of the questions I get asked is, how exactly do you write an Excel spreadsheet that grades itself? Well, here's how we do it. The OMGT 4853, it's an introduction to decision to support tools. Our students coming into this program, if they can pass an Excel proficiency exam, they don't need to take this course, but otherwise they do. And this is a class that's designed to bring people, and remember this program has no GRE, no GMAT requirement. So these people may have never seen Excel before, and we need to bring them from that position to a place where they can do pivot tables, and run Solver in 8 weeks. So we've got some pretty exciting Excel happening to these people. So if you're a student, your experience here is that you download your homework, then you fill out the Excel sheet, and then the Excel sheet gives you feedback right on your own laptop computer. And this feedback can be received if you are in an airplane at 30,000 feet. There's no internet required for this feedback. And then once you've gotten it to how you like it, you can then go and submit it online. And then if you're the professor, what you do is you download everybody's homework. So if you have a section of 30, you'll have 30 of these spreadsheets. And I typically only download the last submission. Then I open the Excel sheets. The full credit grades are displayed right up front on the dashboard. If somebody played with it enough till he got it all right, it just displays 100% right up front. I don't need to look any further. I can just mark them as 100% in the online gradebook. If somebody got 70%, at this point it will flag for me where I need to go in and review, and I can go in and look and manually find out what did he not get right, and I can leave comments and feedback for him in there. It makes my grading a lot more efficient because I'm not checking something that's correct all the time, and I'm able to really spend my time focusing on helping the folks who weren't able to get solver to work the second, third, or fourth time. So here's how it works. Here is one of our homeworks. This is from our, I think it's from about week 2, yeah, it's homework 2. This is a basic statistics. We're teaching them the max and the min functions in Excel. So the max function would be the maximum of a range of numbers, and the minimum would be the minimum of a range of numbers. Our first question here, question 1 says, find the maximum of each of the row of numbers and put it in the green box. You can see that our students here, in this green column here, he got it right. He's got the max function working, and the way you see the max function is working is, it didn't come out real well on here, but it's worth 3 points, and he's got 3 points in the little red circle. So that's how you know he got his max function working. And if you look in the yellow row, that's asking for the row minimum. They've got the row minimum function working there as well. He's got 3 points for that. Now he's stopped. He didn't do the orange column. The orange column asks for the grand overall range, so we're looking for the max minus the min. Because he hasn't done it and it's not correct, he's got a 0 over there. Now some of you are thinking, well, I've seen worse. And some of you are thinking, how did it know to put the 3 there? Before we do that, I'll show you, we put a dashboard up front. If he stops right here, this is what you see, the very first thing you open up when you're grading these things is a dashboard. And this guy has 6 points out of 38 for that first sheet. So he's got 6 points, it's a 40-point homework assignment, so this thing converts it to 1.5 points. Clearly this one's gonna need some attention. But if he got it all right, this would generate 40 out of 40 points, and I can just check him off as full credit in the gradebook and go from there. Where's the magic? It's way out to the right. So we typically use the left columns, like maybe column A through J or K, to display the problem. And then we have these little codes way out to the right at columns AA and AB. And then we hide them before we give the assignment to the students, but they're out there. We use a thing called formula text. It's a function in Excel that says, I know they've typed a formula like max in a cell, but I want you to just strip that out and give it to me as a text string. And then what we do is we just test this text string for conditions that we wanted to be true. And I said, I can't think of all the possible ways they could go wrong here. But here, for example, if the formula that they typed in contains the letters MAX, so it contains a max. If it contains the cell reference of the first one, the cell reference of the last one, and numerically it's got the right result, that's good enough. I'm going to count that as a correct submission. So it tests all those conditions, and then it puts literally a 1 or a 0 there, and it tests it for the first row. There's 50 rows. If they got it right for all 50 rows, then it's considered to be right there. So the way to generate these automatically graded spreadsheets in Excel is you got to break down the conditions of a correct answer into a whole bunch of little Boolean things you can test for. And then you just basically look to see, did all of these things occur? Now, it could be possible that somebody could have something in here that ends up getting marked as correct but isn't correct, but it's fairly unlikely. You'll notice here, if they just noticed that that first answer was going to be 99 and they typed in the numbers 99 instead of the max function, it won't give them credit because it will fail. It won't have the MAX string on there, even though the 99 was there. So when we do these, we do think of kind of the basic ways that the most of them are going to get it wrong, and we try to write the code for that. One of our teachers, one of our professors says, I can't imagine teaching this class without the auto-grading feature. It let me quickly identify problem areas and focus my follow-up instruction and feedback. This was one of our instructors with lots of students. So once you've gotten your Excel auto-grading, you think, well gosh, again, if some is good, more is better. Let's implement this further. We use Blackboard. This is equally applicable if you're using Canvas or Moodle or any of the learning management systems. If your learning management system can't support stuff like this and you're trying to teach OR and analytics, you might want another learning management system. So this is from our maintenance and reliability class. We are looking at the reliability of a new widget manufacturing process. These are 3 machines in series. And what we have is first it's processed at station 1, which has a reliability of, and then we use a variable R1. Station 2 has a reliability of R2, Station 3 has a reliability of R3. And then it asks, what's the reliability of the overall assembly line? You guys probably remember the way to do this. They're in series, so you gotta multiply R1 times R2 times R3, and then we also have them multiply it by 100 to give a percentage. But that's the answer. If I'm gonna allow them all to take this quiz as many times as they want, and I'm gonna show them the answers afterwards, I probably don't want to hard code those numbers because it's possible he could look at the answers and just write down, oh, the answer number 1 is 79, and then never learn to multiply them. So instead what we do is in Blackboard we tell it, I want you to assign a random variable, call it R1, give me a number between 10 and 90. R2 is a number between 10 and 90. R3 is a number between 10 and 90. Multiply them all together, that's going to be the answer. So what the student sees is on the bottom here. We've got these numbers. This one came out to be 0.52, 0.77, 0.68. You multiply them all together. The answer it's looking for is 27.22. So we would typically accept anything between 27 and 27.99 on that one. If you took it again, you would have the same multiplication operation to do. You would just have different numbers, and you could take it 39 different times, and you would have 39 different series of numbers you had to multiply. Sometimes the calculations you want to do are too much for Blackboard. For example, we do a lot of stuff with the normal distribution, that norm inverse and the norm dist. Excel does a really nice job calculating those. And so what we do is you can calculate them, maybe 30 of them, and then put them in a text file, and you can upload that as 30 separate problems. And in this case, what you're saying is, what's the probability x is less than or equal to blah? And then it's just literally doing a numeric match. They're supposed to type in 29%. Did they type in 0.29 or not? So we do some more sophisticated auto-grading as well in our Introduction to Analytics class. This is where we have these guys who came to us, maybe with a background in sales and marketing, and who are now deployed in the military in Afghanistan, and they decide that now's the time they want to learn to program in R. This is what we specialize in. So the skill that we're teaching is the numeric and graphical analysis of data sets. The basic thing that happens is they get the data set, then they need to run some analytics on it, and then they need to enter their answer into Blackboard, and that's going to check to see did they run the analytics correctly. If their answer matches, they will have run them correctly. If it doesn't match, they didn't do it right. We want each student to have a different data set, and we also want to allow them to do several attempts on different data. Not a lot of people get this right the first time they try it, and we want to give them an incentive to try it and retry it. And we also want Blackboard to automatically grade the answers, because that way it can give them immediate feedback and they know when they can keep going and when they can stop. So from the student's point of view, this is what it looks like. You'll take a quiz online and it'll say run the script. We give them a script, which is a little series of computer code. So they'll save that to their laptop and they'll run it on their own laptop. And we also have, of course, videos in our video library showing them how to run the script. It says run the script, and when it asks for a seed, enter the number 7. Each time the student attempts this quiz, that seed is going to change. Sometimes your seed will be 8, sometimes your seed will be 10. And then we give them a little bit of validation numbers, so then the script will actually spit out some validation numbers, and they need to check and see what those are. And then we ask questions at the bottom, like run the correlation function, and tell us which variable is most strongly positively correlated, which variable is most strongly negatively correlated. As the seed changes, the correct answer changes at the bottom too. So from the behind the scenes point of view, this is what we did. This is code that I wrote after consulting Stack Overflow and the rest of my best friends on the internet. We basically, the code asks the student to type in a script, and then it sets the seed to whatever their number was, like 7, 8, or 9, and then we use a pseudo-random number generator that generates random numbers, but the same ones each time. Like if the seed is 7, it generates the same bunch of random numbers each time. And then we just literally, I ran the code, noted what the answers were when the seed was 7, and then programmed that and hard-coded that into Blackboard. So you could get 5 or 10 answer sets pretty quickly here. Okay, so you guys are saying, all right, so you can grade lots of stuff online, but how do you do something that has something like calculus in it? Because we are good mathematicians. Well, Gradescope is a tool, and it's developed at Berkeley, and it's what happens when you have this kind of calculus-based solution set, and you add it up with the people who are normally on the streets of UC Berkeley. It comes out with Gradescope like that. You can grade, scan, handwritten work fully online. You can change how the state is scored for every student with one click. The scores are added up automatically and they're available instantly. And the rubric can evolve over time based on you. The next few slides are given to us by Olga over at Gradescope. She'll welcome any emails you guys have. I told you we found it was not worth spending money on publisher databases and books. It was worth spending some money on Gradescope. The Gradescope workflow is the student does their homework, and then they scan it and upload it to Gradescope. A lot of them can do this pencil and paper at their tables, and then they just snap a picture with their phone and upload it that way, because putting it face down on a printer scanner is so last century. And then the professor, you will grade online with evolving rubrics. You review the grades and you analyze the results. And then you return the work, and you can also manage requests for regrades. They can put in regrade requests online. So here's an example. Let's say I'm teaching a calculus class, and the question is, what is the integral of x? And let's say in this little box is what the student wrote, 1/2 x squared plus c. I'll give you guys a minute to remember, but that they did this when they did it right. That is the integral of x. There's the student's response, that's a question area. You can either give them a template where they write it in the question area, or you can have them just write it on a piece of regular paper, and when they upload it, they tell the computer where they put problem 1, where they put problem 2. And if Johnny put problem 1 on page 1 and problem 2 on page 2, and Susie put them both on the same page, it will keep that straight. So this guy got it right. So what I do is I've decided this is worth 3 points. I'm not going to take off any, so I've got a little 0.0, that's the correct. So I just click that 1, select here, and then at the bottom there's a little thing that says move to the next student. So this is going to let me grade everybody's problem 1, and then I go back and grade everybody's problem 2. This example is for handwritten math. You can also do it for handwritten short answer questions, like if you've got an essay question and you want to grade everybody's essay about a decision analysis problem. Now let's say we have another student. What is the integral of x? Same question, different answer. They sort of got it right. They got the 1/2 x squared, but they forgot the c. So what I said is, ooh, you made a mistake. I'm going to add it to my rubric. So I say, that's going to be worth 1/2 a point. So I take off 1/2 a point for that, and I write them a note. I say they forgot the c. And then while I'm at it, I think, you know what? I'm going to pre-add a rubric item because there's going to be somebody else out there who's going to forget the 1/2. So on the off chance they're going to forget the 1/2, I think that's a more serious error. I'm going to charge them 1 point for that. Now, I have this guy coming in. He's missing his 1/2, but he got the C. What I could do is I can remain consistent from the first student to the last student. And halfway through, if a whole bunch of them are doing this, I could say, you know what, we might not have taught it very well. Maybe I want to take this from a 1 point error down to a 1/2 point error, so I can change that 1 point charge to a 1/2 point, and it will automatically retroactively fix all of those 28 papers that I've already graded, so I don't have to go back and regrade them for consistency. So pros of Gradescope, it's much easier to set up than the textbook websites. It copies over easily semester to semester, and the customer support is excellent. The con is it does cost money, and there's a little bit of setup overhead with the initial assignment templates. The easy way to get around that is you just send them an email to help, and this is where it's kind of fun. You get to be the student, right? You don't watch the directions, you don't read the things, you just call the helpline and say, I'm a professor, I need this to be set up by tomorrow, so in addition to not reading any documentation, I'm in a rush, so I need you to help me, and they will. Ask me how I know this. All right, the next part of grading I'm going to cover is academic integrity. It sometimes brings up concerns in an online environment that maybe people aren't as worried about face-to-face. Some people call it cheating. I'm going to cover academic integrity on homeworks and quizzes, academic integrity on papers, on exams, and then the general question is, how do we cope with this? For homeworks and quizzes, especially if you're getting it out of a printed textbook, you have to assume that the solutions are available online. I took a pretty well-known statistics for business and economics textbook, just ran a Google search on their Go Bananas case study from chapter 2. I said, Go Bananas case study solutions, Anderson, Sweeney, Williams. They got me 382,000 results in under 1 second. The very top one takes me to chegg.com, where with 2 button clicks, it's asking me for $19.95 a month for me to see all the answers to this. you've got to assume that all the solutions to this is available within 30 seconds in a credit card. So the upside is you know you've made it as a professor when your solutions are available on Chegg, Study Hero, or Course Hero, Study Pool, and other websites. If you're really concerned, you can subscribe to these sites and see which of your students have been submitting their papers to the sites. Often a site will accept a submission from a student as payment for other things. If you're feeling especially frisky, you can correct their solutions to your homework. It's also a great activity for a teaching assistant, and it will also keep legal busy, so this can be a fun side hobby. If you do like we did at Arkansas and write a lot of your own material, the leakage is much smaller just because it's a much smaller pool of people who would be leaking it, and it's your own material. The next question is academic integrity on papers. There are plagiarism checkers out there. There's one called SafeAssign, there's another one called Turn It In, there's several others. These are typically integrated with Blackboard or Canvas or Desire to Learn or any of your programs. You need to tell tech support you want to activate it for your class. I set it so it lets my students review their own papers before the final submission, so if it's going to come in with a bunch of plagiarism flags on it, I want the student to see that and have the opportunity to fix it before he submits it. Sometimes they just forgot to put quotes, sometimes they need to rewrite the whole paper. This is what it looks like. You got a Blackboard screen. This particular group assignment came up as a 52% match to stuff in their database. All that's telling me is they got a 52% text match to something that's already in their database. So this got my attention. Click on it. You can see the week 1 group case study here. And what it does is on the left, it gives the text of the group case study that these people submitted. And on the right, it shows me by color what item it matches. Now the first item it got a match on was assignment 1.4-group project. This I don't care so much about. I'm kind of hoping everybody in the class put that on the top of their paper. University of Arkansas, that's also not a surprise. It's a verbatim match to half the class. I'm kind of wondering what university the other half put on their class. Maybe we'll go from there. But these guys, their executive summary, the first several sentences of it were great, but this last sentence in green is a verbatim match to a sentence in some other student's paper. If I click on it on the right, it'll show me the paper which it is matching. So I can see, sometimes they match an earlier version of something they themselves submitted, sometimes they match a version of something somebody submitted in a different professor's section last semester. The next thing we work on is online and academic integrity on exams. I told you with our template, we typically have individual work, and then we have an exam or an evaluation halfway through, and then at the end of the course. We use a company called ProctorU. ProctorU, if you're the student, your experience is you create an account and you log in to ProctorU. Hardly strictly optional, they must do an equipment check. Not all equipment is good enough to sustain the ProctorU video bandwidth that they need. A student will reserve a test-taking window with a date and a time. And again, our exams will typically run for 7 full days, so somebody will reserve it Friday morning, someone will reserve it Saturday afternoon. They need to show up on time. The proctor will validate the student's identity. They'll ask them to hold up a driver's license, and they'll ask them some Experian type questions like, did you ever live at this street address, yes or no? The proctor only allows the conditions set by the professor. You can set them from everything from closed book, no bathroom breaks, nothing, to the kitchen sink. Open book, open note, as many restroom breaks as you need. So you could change it by the exam. I could set one exam to be very locked down and another exam to be very open. The student completes the exam, and then the proctor just flags issues and they email the professor. So for example, we don't allow cell phones on or near our test takers. But if a test taker is going to get his phone out and text his mom for help during exams, the proctor can't quite reach through the screen and take the phone and stop it. All the proctor does is make a note of it, and then they send me an incident report. And then I need to review it and decide what I'm going to do, given that the student did this thing. Here's the professor experience. I set unique passwords on all my exams. I change every exam password. For the midterm and the final passwords are different, and they change by the class and by the semester. That way you don't have somebody accidentally trying to sign up to take last year's exam. The test window should extend several days, at a minimum 2 work days and 2 weekend days. I only return tests when the last one is taken. If it's a 7-day exam window, it's day 8 is the soonest anybody gets their exam back, even though I may choose to grade them as they come in to smooth out my workload. I don't want to release them with the solutions until everybody's taken it. And then also we password protect any downloaded files. Sometimes we'll give them an Excel file or a Word document to read or do during the exam. We password protect those. It just helps them not to grow more legs than they need to. This is what an issue looks like. Let's say my student Benedict Arnold was cheating on his test. What I'll get is a little incident report like this. I get a picture of my student. And then I get down here notes from the proctor. And the proctor notes here say, a review of the video recording was conducted. During this session, the student kept going off camera, and the proctor kept saying, you can't go off camera, you gotta come back and stay on camera. And the student didn't listen. The student kept going off camera, and then they submitted their exam. And so what you could do is you could review this. And sometimes I had a situation where he was going off camera to get materials that he was not allowed to have. There was another time where there was a student who went off camera 3 times during the exam, and it turned out that she had her 2-year-old home with her who was napping in the next room, and the baby was not napping as well as he should have been. And she had asked me ahead of time, is it okay if I do this? And I'd said yes, but I neglected to flag her for the proctors. And so I was able in that case to say, it's fine. She was probably just dealing with the baby. And I reviewed her exam, and she did on the exam as I would have expected her to do, given her performance in the course. So you can make different arrangements for that. Best practices for academic integrity that we found, we're looking for things that give students a really good opportunity to do their best work. Like, it's no fun raising an academic integrity issue, so we want to remove incentives to do that. On homeworks and quizzes, if they're low point values, no more than 30 to 40% of the overall course point totals, if you let students retake these things as many times as they want, show them the solutions, and allow internet resources, and also if you do it as a formative assessment, right here, you've kind of taken away all the incentive to cheat. So I sort of don't worry about it. And then on summative assessments, on exams and papers, this is typically high point values, 60 to 70% of the points. The accreditation bureaus like this because they're able to say, you're really able to lock down the student identity for 70% of the points in the class, so they're probably not passing it if they can't pass the midterm or the final. We like the proctored or plagiarism checked. We also like to do different numbers for problems for each student. So for example, that reliability problem I showed you would be a great one for a midterm because it will, if you have 30 students, all 30 of them will have the same reliability and series problem, but there will be 30 different numeric answers that need to happen. And we like to make these summative assessments. Great. The last part of this one is designing good online classes, student engagement, getting them to actually dance at the party. How to build online engagement. We like videos. Students love to see themselves on camera. Have them post their own video to a class discussion. And we also have them review classmates' videos. We've had great luck with the 3 stars in a wish format. So you can't just review Bobby's video and say, Bobby, that was good. You need to say 3 things, specific things that you liked about his video or that you thought argued his point well. And then offer 1 constructive criticism, like your video could have been improved at that. And when I grade these things, if it's a 10-point discussion thing, they'll get 7 points for their own posting, and then they get 3 points for giving thoughtful feedback to each of 3 classmates. So I do grade them on how well they provide the feedback as well. For team projects, we do really well giving them buddies and putting them in teams. It's especially important if they're a fully online student. If it's their first semester, they really like having a lifeline of somebody that they know that they can text or email in this program. For women, if you've got a heavy male skew, there's some research out there from Professor Nilanjana Dasgupta of the University of Massachusetts Amherst saying don't put it so that there's only 1 woman on a team if you can possibly avoid it. Put your women together. Time zones. If you've got a global system, you might want to consider time zones when assigning teams. If you've got a whole bunch of people in the mountain time zone, maybe they would do well on a team together. And then also, we've had great luck with having these team peer evaluations each week. There are sometimes people who will up the level of their game just so they don't get dinged on the peer evaluations. And sometimes they have very constructive thoughts. A lot of these guys didn't realize that somebody wanted a 24-hour response on emails, or that their teammates weren't thrilled with doing this at the very last minute every week. Other things you could do, You could post samples of good work each week. You know, this week we owe thanks to Marcy Xavier for permission to share her week 3 paper with you. We use their names in classroom assignments. People love to see their names in print. Thanks to classmate Stephen Blake, we have this link to this free Tableau webinar, and then you thank classmate Stacy Chang for taking notes of the webinar and making them available to the class. I answer questions they get asked in their weekly surveys, like several of you had questions about shadow prices and linear programming. Here's a little extra stuff I did based on that. You can run public service announcements. You know, all students are invited to the university's online job fair to be held at this web link. I also like to ask about and keep a little list of their preferred nicknames. Online, the computer is merciless with using people's full names. And Christopher might not like to be called Christopher. He might prefer to be called Chris. And if it were a face-to-face class, that would be a lot more evident. I find I could just keep a little hidden text column in the gradebook about their preferred nickname. And if they would prefer I don't share their work with the class, I keep notes on that too. Other ways to build online engagement, if you could play games with them. The Near Beer game is a great free online supply chain management game. It's written by Michael Beam of Foreo Simulate. We have some assignments where they have to play this game with specific parameters and take specific screenshots and write it up and submit it to demonstrate mastery of it. And this is another thing where they can run it online as many times as they want. You can see down here they've got to place their raw materials order. It goes in transit, it goes to work in process, then it goes to finished goods inventory. And this is a great one where you could have them demonstrate the bullwhip effect in supply chain management and then demonstrate how to fix the bullwhip effect. We also had luck with running mock trials. This is good where there's something a little bit more nebulous. We have the prosecution. We might have them argue that bad supply chain management is a crime. Company X is guilty of it. You can change Company X up to semester based on your case studies. The defense needs to argue either bad supply chain management is not a crime, or conversely, that Company X is not guilty of it. They've actually got good supply chain management. And then the judges have to decide upon the criteria for good and bad supply chain management and render a verdict. If you were going to run this on a discussion board, maybe by day 2 you would have opening statements. By day 4 you would have rebuttals. By day 5 you would take questions from the judges. And by day 7 the judge would come out with their verdicts. A couple notes about this: if you run one of these, my recommendation would be to run it for a team, because you are going to have a couple of 2 and 3 day turnarounds here. So in a team of 5, somebody's going to be able to do something on Tuesday night. So you'll be able to space it out that way. And then also be clear in the grading here that you're not grading based on which side won or lost. You could be arguing for the prosecution and lose, but you could have demonstrated a very good understanding of supply chain management, and that could earn you a good grade on this assignment. You can also use the Edelman Fantasy OR. This is super fun. You guys know what the Edelman competition is. I'm sure you do because you're here. You could have them view several different Edelman competition videos. You could choose videos from different years. Students judge and pick a winner. You could pull from one theme, like online advertising. So for example, this one in 2018, we had an entry from Turner. In 2016, we had an online advertising entry from 360i. And then in 2014, we had Twitter. You could have them run those 3 and pick a winner out of those 3. Or you could also do grab bag, like, all right, you guys have to evaluate every company with the letter X in its name. You know, that's because the real Edelman competition is you're evaluating people from diverse fields. It's probably a little bit easier to run 3 of them in the same field and pick the best one there. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into the development process. So up until now, it's been what needs to be done. And now this is moving forward. This is more of a management overview, or what are the resources that it takes to actually do it. With the online development, it typically takes more work up front and more technical skills. But then when you teach it, it typically takes less time to grade and typically gives you more time to interact with your students, either by writing written feedback to them or talking with them on the phone or video chatting. I'm just going to give you some data that we've taken. This is all from the University of Arkansas. Your mileage may vary. Our version 1.0 Intro to Operations Management class, we had a team of 3 professors and 1 ET. The ET is not an extraterrestrial, it's an educational technologist. Anybody else who's a master of your online system. The key here is these people are probably not OR PhDs. They're probably not into the math part of it, but they are super good at your online learning system. This one took about 200 professor hours to develop it, between the 3 professors, so about 70 hours per, and about 30 ed tech hours of support. And then to teach it for about 25 students, it's about 10 hours of work split into about 6 hours a week of grading and about 4 hours a week of talking to people. We did version 2.0, which is 1 professor. This was me. We had to wean ourselves off of the textbook videos and the textbook website. This was another 50 hours. There was no change in the workload except that now our students could watch videos that worked. We had our decision support system, sometimes nicknamed the Excel class. This is with no auto grading. One newbie professor developed this. Took about 50 hours to develop an 8-week class. But with 25 students, it was about 15 hours a week to grade because we didn't have any of the auto grading in the homework. So it was really death by Excel spreadsheet. It was quite a slow process. And then version 2.0, we implemented the auto-graded homeworks. It was the same little bit wiser professor. It took about 30 hours to put in the auto-grading codes for the homework assignments. And we were then able to run classes of 50 students on less grading time. So you can see our bandwidth went up to 50, and it went down to about 15 hours a week to teach that. We did a version 3.0 upgrade. We had now 2 professors available and 1 educational technologist. This was about 120 hours to do the upgrade. This happened because Excel went to Excel 2016, so we had to upgrade. We needed a whole new video library and a whole new refresh of the homeworks. We had about 30 ET hours, and then we also had about 50 hours of somebody being the bug master. And this was because the course by this time was large enough and deployed in enough places that every time we found a problem, there were several places to fix it. It wasn't just one place in the development shell. There was no change in the workload. You could still reasonable to have one experienced person teach this class with 40 or 50 students in them. We have a decision models class. We had 1 professor and 1 educational technologist develop that. That took about 150 professor hours and about 150 educational technologist hours. To teach about 20 students, it's about 5 hours a week of grading and 5 hours a week of talking. This was probably the most complicated course that we've developed and put online because decision models was a pretty complicated subject. We have a risk management class. This is a calculus-based class with handwritten homework, so we use Gradescope there. That took only 1 professor, about 100 hours to develop the class. And for 20 students, it's about 3 hours a week of grading and 5 hours a week of talking them through stuff. The Introduction to Analytics class was 1 professor, about 110 hours to develop it with 50 ed tech hours of support. And for 20 students, you can see, so you see these numbers are all fairly similar, that about 20, you're looking at a couple hundred hours of development time up front. And then for classes of 20 to 30 students, it's about 10-ish hours a week, which is a reasonable workload. What you've got here, this white line, represents your in-person effort. If you're just teaching it like the Pied Piper, if you teach it 2 terms, it's 2x the effort, 3 terms is 3x the effort. With the online, you typically have a higher upfront cost, but then a lower per hour, lower per semester cost. We are the Razorbacks. We like our break-even points. We found for our classes and our metrics, very roughly the overall average, the break-even is somewhere around term 3 or term 4. So what that means is if you're gonna have 1 person teach it, they need to plan to teach it for 3 or 4 terms before you make back that development time. However, if you're gonna deploy it in 4 parallel sections, you'll make back the development time the first time you deploy it. In theory, your development process has your department chair with objective alignment. You have a team of professors and educational technologists doing the development. You have the first run of the class, a small class taught by the developer. And then you have ongoing, you've got the maintaining the development shell and mentoring new professors. What you'll notice here is there is a gap between the development of the first run, which implies you've got all the development done before class started. There's a gap between the say and the do. This is how it generally goes down. You'll notice the gap is moved to an overlap here. Then you begin to have noises, like the department chair says things like, however did we leave communication out of our objectives? And the development team says we must have the midterm written by the time class starts. The first person teaching it says, whoever thought PepsiCo would be a good case study? But really, here's where it goes. Once you've got it ongoing, the bug master is going to govern victory or defeat, because once you have a couple copies of this shell running around, what you'll have is Professor 1 will find bug A, and Professor 2 will find bug B. You want to get all the bugs deployed and fixed in all the shells. Plus we keep a master copy called the development shell where we keep all the bugs fixed. So if we have a new professor coming in, we give them a clean copy of the most up-to-date shell. That was a time investment that we didn't necessarily realize we'd have to make until we needed it. Last little bits here, the development process. Realize it's a software development project. Don't keep it all on one person's laptop. Back up your development files daily. You want version control. The only thing worse than having no answers to quiz 3 is having 13 versions of the answers to quiz 3, all of them with something slightly else wrong with them. You want institutional memory, you can back it up to Google Drive, OneDrive, Box, it doesn't matter where, but you've got to back it up. We like to back it up to an instructor-only area in the classroom, so that way, if an instructor gets a copy of the classroom, they also automatically get a copy of all the Word files that you use to develop it, plus all the solutions. And then technology help. We have an academic technologist, who has a purely technical side of course building. These people are really good at doing weird things on Blackboard. And you call them when you know what to do, you just can't get the bleeping computer to do it. Like, how do I make my classroom stop blinking in red? An instructional designer typically has an MED or an EDD in education or related field. They can provide pedagogical help, design help, project management. You call these people when you have no idea what to do, but you have to do it anyways. So I asked them, for old dogs moving online, what can you do for us? They said, show me your face-to-face materials. EdTech can translate these into learning activities. We can help making videos, we can help build online exams for you. I asked them, what does your average week include? And they said, well, sometimes it's supporting 5 to 7 professors doing intense work like development. Sometimes it's 12 to 15 professors doing quick fixes like the semester start or the semester end. Over the year, they said that it'll typically support 100 or more courses, 30 or more professors. And they do weekly screen shares with various projects. What this means is these guys are experts in putting stuff online. They may not be an expert in supply chain management or linear programming, but they got the School of Nursing to do it, they got the Department of Physics to do it, they even got the law school to do it, they can get you to do it too. So I asked them, what are some best practices? They all said over-communicate. They basically said, don't send me an email like this. Please take the attached Word document and put it in as homework. That's just going to generate a phone call from them right back to you. They said, instead what you should tell them is something like, please take the attached Word document, convert to a multiple choice quiz worth 10 points, mount in week 3 is the week 3 quiz with 60 minutes to take it, automatic submission, up to 3 retakes, and show them the correct answers after submission. If you give them this level of specificity, they can actually execute on it, and the next email you'll get back from them is it's been done. I asked them what else they would like us to know. They said proactively set up a short training session to learn the basics in 1 to 2 hours. They said get it in early. They like to complete the entire course design before the course opens. And I said, I know you do. And they also said they don't want new professors. They said don't be afraid to break your HTML. The initial training can take that fear away. If you can just learn to do a few things, you can fix a lot of it yourself. It's very likely they can fix any HTML that you broke. And if they can't fix it, they can just restore from backup. So really don't worry about breaking your HTML. So in summary, the online, it's a brave new world out there. There's some easy on-ramps for face-to-face professors. Take an online class as a stealth student and then teach an online class that somebody else has already developed. If you're gonna write your own, there's a lot of great online tools. Make good use of the videos and adaptive release. To the extent you could get online or automatic grading going, that's really helpful to the students. They love the immediate feedback. And then the development process. It has higher upfront fixed investments. There's a much lower weekly workload required if you get your assignments automatically graded properly. It's scalable. And the break-even is in about 3 to 4 terms. And the last piece of advice I would have is make friends with your ed tech. So that is all I have for you today. I'm Carrie Beam from the University of Arkansas. You can find me at that email address or online 24/7 at msom.uark.edu. So thank you. Who's got a question for me? Yeah.
So when the students are grading the video links, what do you use for that? Is that Google Forms or?
Can you say that one more time, a little bit louder?
So when the students are rating the various video links, with the stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, what are they using? What are you using for that? Is that Google Forms or what?
Yeah, so the question is for the video library in which the students rate the videos, 1 star, 3 stars, 5 stars, what do we use? It's a Google Form submission, and there's actually an opinion scale in there that you could just have them click on a little fill in the box blank. Yeah, to look at that, I had to Google the answer to how do you get Google Forms to do an opinion scale.
Thanks.
You mentioned about Proctor U. How is it different from Proctor U?
So how is Proctor?
Proctor U.
So if I,
Proctor U.
yeah, so there's a company named,
RIO. Proctor U.
I'm not sure I understand the question. So there's one company named Proctor U, PROCTRU.com.
Yeah, there is another tool called Proctor U.
I-
RIO.
I don't know. I've not heard of the second one.
And here Proctor U, so they have human subjects they monitor the students.
Yeah, so Proctor will typically have maybe 6 students that they're watching at a time, and they come in as a staggered workload. So they will personally work with the student to get the exam up and running, and then it will sort of go on the Proctor's control screen, and they'll sort of watch it.
Proctor U, what they do is they record the students and then based on the record that they have, they provide some kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Identify some flags and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the Proctor U, what they'll do is they'll do a video share with the student, so they see the student, but then they will also screen share with the student to make sure the student doesn't have any disallowed screens up that they're viewing as well. Did you?
Are there any issues where students who are hearing impaired and closed captioning becomes important? For videos, for video
Oh
recording?
yeah, good question. We haven't had that issue yet. If we did have it, I know we would do some ADA support for that. So we would do some closed captioning or other support. We haven't had issues like that to date.
By 2022 or 2023, every month, every document that we post in our courses, they should be accessible. So, yeah, so that becomes a big issue.
So the question is, are there tools available like Camtasia?
What I heard is when you upload your video to YouTube, there are some tools available.
That is closed captioning?
You could do auto captioning. If you
I
could,
heard about it.
yeah, and you could also with the video have them upload their PowerPoint slides with the script, with their notes below it for reading as well. Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming. It's been a pleasure to have you here this afternoon.